Today we will talk about arrays, how we can pass arrays to methods and how we can return them. But before we begin, I want to show you one thing real quick. Uh, so we talked about methods in great detail, but I want to show you one more thing. Uh, and that is you will see how it works. So here let's go through this little program. Here I have created an object which is not needed for now. So all you have to look at is that here I have called a variable called int x. So x is my variable. I am passing it 10, right? And then I am passing it through the method called test, right? And let's look at the test method now, since it will be executed when our program comes here. So here I'm changing the value of x to 20, and then I'm printing the value of x. And after this is done, I am printing the value of x again. But this is the x of main method. So let's run our program. So, as you can see in the test method, the value of x got changed since we modified it to 20. But in the main method, the value of x is still the same. So, this is the concept I wanted to show you. So, as you know, each method has its own variables. So, the value of x will not be changed even after passing unless we return it, right? Unless we return the value, then it will be changed. Uh, but this was the main idea, and this is called pass by value. So it is a concept of passing, that we are passing by value. Our original x will stay the same no matter if we pass it to any method, right? It will stay the same. But the other concept is pass by reference, which works differently. And if I wanted to change the value, I can simply change its return type, and I can return x after executing, and I can store the result of x into this. So now I am returning the value of x, and I'm storing it back into x. Now the values are the same in both cases. So this is called pass by value, and I hope you have understood this concept. But let's close this. Now let's talk about passing arrays. So to pass arrays, let's first create a simple array called x. Int x is equal to new int, and let's give it size 5. Or instead of doing that, let's give it elements directly. Let's give it 1, 2, um, 3, 4, and 5. So this is our array. And let's create a simple method. I'm gonna call it getArray, and I want to pass that array. So to pass any array, similar to a variable, you have to type its data type and name. So first we type the data, that is int, and then we type the array name. You can give it any name. It doesn't have to be x, or you can call it x. You can give it any name. Since these variables are not linked, uh, I'm gonna call it elements, or let's call it x for simplicity. And now we are passing a simple integer, but we need to pass an integer array. So I have to add square brackets along with x. So that's how you pass array. Data type, square brackets, and the name, whatever name you wanna give. So now I have a method, and in that method, let's change the value of array. So let's change the value of. Remember, arrays are immutable. That is, their values can be changed. We can change the values of an array. We can randomly change any value of the array, or we can change all values of an array by using a loop. So let's change x 0 to 200, and let's change x1 to 200. Now let's call this method called getArray. Let's pass it x. Now let's try printing. Let's print the first element before, first two elements before. Uh, before passing our x0 was this, and let's simply copy this. After passing x0 equals 2, and after passing x0 equals 2. So now let's run our program. As you can see, before passing our 0th index was 1, right? It was 1 here, and then we passed our array to this method, and then we assigned 100 to this 0th index and 200 to the first index. And as you can see, after this method has done its execution, it printed the value of x0 again, but now it is 100. So this is what I wanted to show you. Arrays are passed by reference. So when you pass an array, a copy of original array is not created, it is the same array. The same array is passed here. So if any value is modified in this function, the value will also be modified in the main method. So this is how pass by referencing works. Values modified in other methods are also modified in the creator method. So this not only works for main method, this also works for other method. Suppose you created an array int y, right? Then you passed it to a method. Suppose there is a method under it. Let's call it method2. Suppose you passed it to this method2, right? You are passing it to method2. So we are passing it to method2. Now in method2 we change each value of array element, right? So and after changing it, we simply end our method2, and after the calling method2 into this method, if you print the value of any array element again, it will be also changed here. So the value of array is like a global variable. It can change in the whole program, but it is not accessible everywhere. Suppose we don't pass this value. Suppose we don't pass this array. Now we can't access it. As you can see, we are getting errors here. So you must pass the value, then only then you can access it. But remember, the arrays are passed by reference. The value gets changed. Let's try writing one more function. Let's write a simple function which takes input, right? So let's first I have to create an object of the scanner class, and as you can see, I am creating a object here as well. Even though I already have it created here, I need to create it again since each function has its own methods, right? Each function has its own variables and objects. I can't access it. So that's why I'm passing it here as well. Now I'm going to run a for loop which will simply take input from the user. I is less than x dot length. Size is not known, therefore I'm using the length function, and I am incrementing the value of I. And here I'm printing that enter a value, enter num, or you can call it anything you want, and then I'm storing the value at ith index, which will be obtained from the user. And now this is our program. We need to pass an array instead of an integer variable. So now we have created a method which takes input from the user, right? So let's create a new array called, let's call it nums. You can call it any name. You can even call it x, right? New int, let's give it 4. It will have 4 elements. And then let's call the inputting, let's change the name to inputting. Let's call the inputting method here. Let's pass it nums. And after that, let's print all values of num. So we have to run a for loop again to print all values of num. So let's run that. Simply print I'm gonna print them on new line anyway for now. So now we are printing our array after passing it into this function. So let's try running our program. And as you know, when an array is created here, it consists of 4 zeros. Since its length is 4, all values are zeros. Then we are calling this function to take the input. So now it's asking for input, which is this code is getting executed here. So I'm gonna enter 4, then 60, then 11, then 12. So as you can see, we got our all 4 elements. They were not modified. As you can see, they were not modified into the main function. They were modified here, but their values were modified into the main method as well. So this is how arrays are passed. They are passed by reference. But suppose so because of this, you don't need to return an array back, right? You don't need to return an array since array is already modified. We don't have to return it. But suppose you want to return it anyway. So in that case, what you have to do first, you have to change the return type. Instead of writing it, you have to write int, which tells now it will return an int variable. But we need an array, so we write square brackets, and then simply in the end. Uh, Before the method exists, return the array. So now I'm returning the array, and now this function will return a value. So now I need to save the returned array into another array. So I'm gonna use this array. I'm gonna store the value back into this array. You can create a new array as well. Like I can create a new array called nums2, right? So here I have to change nums to, or you can store the value. Now I'm creating a new array and I'm storing these values, the returned array into this. So now let's run it. It's asking value, let's enter 1, 2, 3, 4. So as you can see, all elements are getting printed here. So you can return an array like this, but you don't have to return since value is also changed into the main function. So that is for today's video. Thank you for watching.